All right, let's go ahead and get started. I think everyone's here. Supervisor Dunn, you with us?
I am right here now.
Okay,
I'm having the actual place record here.
okay, good. Thank you. All right. Discussion of school operating funding.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor McCarty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you to all the representatives from the school administration and the school board that are here. Mr. Monk, last Wednesday morning, April 27th, I called and spoke with you and raised questions I had about the federal ESSER funds. And during that conversation, I asked several questions, including, was there $7 million or more appropriated to Taylor renovations in the superintendent's budget proposal? And you indicated that yes, there had been. Is that correct?
I think what I indicated is to respond and write those questions to the email and we followed up with. So.
And in that same conversation, I asked, was that appropriation now off the table since the school board had voted to surplus Taylor, and you indicated that it was in fact off the table. Taylor would not be moving forward, the old Taylor would not be moving forward as a project, correct?
Taylor would be correct. We have nothing available to reach back.
And I asked, could those funds be used for any of the capital projects listed on page 11 of the superintendent's budget presentation, including the chiller and water heater replacement at Al J. Howard, boiler and water heater replacement at Hoover Elementary, and boiler and water heater replacement at NREP, Cincinnati Road. And you had indicated that you did believe that those three projects could qualify for ESSER if local funds had not been appropriated to those items, correct?
Correct, under the ESSER funding.
Right. I also asked if ESSER funds could be used for things like giving bonus pay to teachers and administrators. And again, you indicated that those funds could indeed be used for purposes such as giving COVID bonuses or bonuses to teachers and administrators. Correct?
Yep, similar to the county.
Okay. Is it also correct that I then followed up with you about an hour later via email in which I reiterated the same points from our phone conversation in that email?
Correct. I think I asked and then you shared those exact same questions that we could.
Thank you. At that point, you indicated that you believed that my email was accurate, but that you wanted to forward it to Ms. Camry to confirm that the Al J. Howard project, NREP project, and Bass Hoover project would in fact qualify, correct?
Correct.
Later that afternoon, you forwarded back to me an email from Ms. Camry in which she stated that she'd spoken with Dr. Sabine and provided answers to each point, correct?
Correct.
After receiving that email, I called you for clarification on item number 2 of the email, because while you and I understood that what Ms. Camry was saying, that the three projects listed for Al J. Howard, NREP, and Bass Hoover could be funded with ESSER, there was also a mention in Ms. Camry's response that ESSER 2 funds had been used, or at least considered to be used, for building automation system replacements at various locations. And I pointed out that there was a $2 million building automation expenditure on page 11 of the superintendent's budget presentation. And at that point, I asked if that too could be eligible for ESSER funds, correct?
Correct. And followed up with Ms. Camry, they answered.
Right. So you indicated that you believe Ms. Camry's email did confirm that ESSER funds could be used for building automation, but that you wanted to confirm them. So you then reached out to Ms. Camry. A couple hours later, you called me and explained that there is a particular process that would have to be followed in order to get the building automation covered by ESSER, but yes, that project too could be paid for with ESSER funds, correct?
Correct.
I asked you on that call if the following statement would be accurate. I said that I have confirmed with the school system there are 4 projects in the school capital budget request totaling up to $3,050,000 that federal funds, if properly applied, could be used for, and you indicated that statement was factually accurate, correct?
Yes, actually.
Thank you. So all of these questions were raised the morning before the vote last Wednesday because I and other supervisors were not aware that the $7.2 million had been allocated to renovate the old Taylor until late in the evening the night before. I asked at the last Board of Supervisors meeting if any of the board members, our board members, were aware that $7.2 million had been allocated to Taylor, and all of the supervisors indicated they were not aware of such an allocation. Since that meeting, I've heard comments that we should have known about it because at one point in the last year it was posted to the school's website for 30 days, and that it had been included in the notes in the agenda presentation for the school finance committee meeting from February 3rd. And I don't doubt that the school finance committee and the school board have spoken about the Taylor project on multiple occasions at their meetings, but you all did not have those conversations directly with us. For years, we've been told that all the necessary budget information can be found in one of 2 places, either in the superintendent's proposed budget presentation or in last year's budget. As far as I can tell, this information on Taylor was not listed in either of those 2 documents. Further, the information found in the school finance committee meeting information mentions Taylor among several other projects without giving any indication as to how much money is to be allocated directly to Taylor. To me, this is an example of why we need one unified budget document with all of the detail, rather than being told that we have to look at document A, compare that with document B, then compare it with quarterly expense reports from the prior fiscal year, and finally compare it with all of the meeting minutes of the Finance Committee meetings. I'm grateful to the school board members, to you and Mr. Comstock, for having committed to improving that budget process, because I think that process can help alleviate a lot of the issues that we're dealing with at this point, and that we need to develop a single unified budget document. Perhaps if other school board members join you in supporting such an improvement in the process, that in the future budget discussions will be much more productive for having such a document. More importantly, though, I raised those questions last Wednesday because just a few weeks earlier, during our discussions with school board representatives, Supervisor Ludwig and I had asked a very specific question. We asked whether or not there were any local funds in the budget request that could instead be paid for with federal ESSER funds. We were told at that time that no, federal dollars could not be used for anything in the budget that had been allocated for local funds. But then 2 weeks later, we find out that in fact there was the potential that up to $3 million, $3,050,000 worth of projects in the capital proposal could indeed be paid for with federal funds rather than local funds. Now I understand that the school administration may have other plans for that money, but that's not what was conveyed to the members of this board. That was the concern and the frustration that I raised at last week's meeting. And the point was that had ESSER funds been used for those capital expenditures, that would have freed up $2.1 million of local funds. Local funds that would have allowed the school board to choose whether to fully fund teacher salary increases, hiring, and pay bumps, or choose to fund the capital projects on the CIP, which were not part of the original budget request. My point was that the school board held a meeting at which it stated it did not have the money needed to give special ed teachers a pay increase or hire staff that had been in their budget, and then they blamed the board of supervisors for not providing the funding. My point was that the schools chose to spend ESSER funds on other projects, not in the original budget, that could have offset local dollars, that could have fully funded the operating budget, could have fully funded the pay increases, the extra dollars for special education, etc. But some school board members proceeded to say at their meeting a week ago that they had no choice because they didn't have the money, when in fact the school system would have had the money had they chosen to spend it, but they chose to spend it on other things. Thank you for confirming our conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I just want to confirm, I had a conversation with you on April the 22nd. It should have been Thursday, a week after the Board of Supervisors' first meeting, where I asked you if the questions that had been asked by Supervisor Dunn for some clarification on those ESSER funds. Do you recall that conversation?
I think so. If I was on the way home, I think I was on driving at that point.
You were.
Okay.
And the request that I made was, would you please explain to me the $10 million, $10,800,000 that's federal dollars here and where it's going? Do you recall the conversation?
We had many between everybody, but sure.
The conversation that I had with you was that I asked where that money was going. And the reason that I asked where that money was going was because there was no breakdown of the budget. It just showed the $10,800,000. And I asked where those funds were designated to be spent because there was no breakdown. And the last that I'd seen documentation from the school system was that those funds were to be utilized for the Taylor School. Do you recall the $7.2 million figure that we discussed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that you would say that number that I stated from the diocese last Wednesday evening would have been correct?
So the original intent was to use those funds for the renovation of Taylor, correct?
Perfect.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, exactly what I'm asking. Thank you so much. That's all the questions I had. I just want to confirm our conversation. We had that conversation. That was the amount that we were discussing, and that is how I got the numbers that I disseminated with my fellow board members for discussion.
And I shared that some other projects potentially, the school division had in mind, but that original intent was the Taylor's.
Perfect. Thank you so very much for clarification.
Okay. Who's next?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if we're done with the conversation yet, but I'd like to make a motion for the budget if we're at that point. Okay. I'm going to make a two-part motion, if I may. First part of the motion will go as follows. I move to rescind our vote from April the 13th, 2022, approving the county budget to the extent that it would remove the approval of local funds for school capital improvements budget totaling $2,151,000 $758, including the $1,283,875 in local funds requested to fully fund capital initiatives, and the $867,883 transfer from school debt to capital fund, which are included in the school's estimated state county transfer funds available to support initiatives, and that such funds, having been removed from the school capital budget, shall be transferred to the county transportation reserve. Additionally, this is part two. I would so move that we approve the school operating budget, which would be scenario A, less the amounts above, as well as an additional $2.1 million from their request, which of that $2.1 million shall be transferred to the county transportation reserve, and that the school budget operating funds be appropriated by category, with the exact categorical breakdown being determined in a subsequent vote, for a total reduction of $4,251,758. So ends my motion.
Sandy, you okay? Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion, anyone? Anyone? Hearing none? Supervisor Ludwig.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter. Supervisor Wells.
No.
Supervisor McCarthy.
Aye.
Supervisor Dodd.
Aye.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Aye.
Thank you. Supervisor Grady.
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Stand adjourned.
Why do we even have this meeting if they're not going to let him talk? Unbelievable. That's okay. Graver's the one that done. Should have let them talk. That's the whole purpose of the meeting. He's a joke. He doesn't belong here.
Sit down.
I got the
Shame on you, Marky. Ian Scraper. Give us a real job. Pretty girl, they asked for that body count.
That's you, Dave. They just they didn't even ask any questions. They just used this to call us out. And then took more money. Sorry.